It's unsettling how quickly a normal morning can turn into something unimaginable. I often think about Lisa Hartwell, a 33-year-old marketing coordinator setting out for her usual 5 a.m. jog in Wildwood Heights. She had no idea what was waiting for her in the shadows. In 2025, as part of Animal Quest, I found myself investigating some truly horrifying animal encounters, and Lisa's story from 2016 remains one of the most disturbing. Wildwood Heights, an affluent neighborhood in Boulder, Colorado, was still and dark that October morning. Built just 5 years earlier, the community bordered the Rocky Mountain foothills, its modern homes backing onto open space and wildlife corridors. Lisa, drawn by the promise of mountain living with urban conveniences, had moved there 2 years prior. She was dedicated to her fitness, maintaining a strict exercise schedule despite her demanding career. Her morning run was sacred, a peaceful time to clear her mind and enjoy the crisp mountain air and stunning views. That autumn had been unusually dry, and local wildlife officials had issued warnings about increased animal activity. Deer, elk, and their predators were venturing closer to human settlements in search of water. There had been several mountain lion sightings reported, including tracks in backyards and a large cat near the retention pond. Lisa had heard the warnings but dismissed them, confident that her familiar neighborhood streets were safe. Mountain lions, also known as cougars or pumas, are North America's second-largest wild cat species. Adult males can weigh between 115 and 220 pounds. They're powerful predators, perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain, possessing incredible stealth, speed, and jumping ability. They can leap vertically up to 15 feet and horizontally up to 45. Mountain lions are primarily ambush hunters, relying on surprise attacks, typically targeting the neck and spine of their prey. As Lisa jogged through the pre-dawn darkness, a 140-pound male mountain lion had been stalking a mule deer through a drainage culvert beneath the street she was approaching. Lisa's approach disrupted the hunt, startling both the deer and the mountain lion. The deer bolted, disappearing into the darkness, leaving the frustrated predator crouched in the shadows. The attack came without warning. As Lisa passed within 10 feet of the culvert, the mountain lion exploded from the shadows with incredible speed, covering the distance in a single leap. His massive front paws struck Lisa between the shoulder blades, sending her crashing face first onto the asphalt. His weight drove her to the ground. Lisa's attempts to scream were cut short as the mountain lion's powerful jaws clamped down on the back of her neck, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across Lisa's back and shoulders, opening deep gashes that severed major blood vessels and caused massive tissue damage. The 140-pound cat used his incredible strength to pull Lisa's body across the asphalt and down into the concrete culvert, where the darkness and confined space would provide protection while he fed. Lisa's body was recovered 3 hours later by a joint team of police officers and Colorado Parks and Wildlife personnel. The mountain lion had abandoned his kill when the search teams approached, retreating further into the drainage network that connected to the natural creek system beyond the neighborhood. Lisa had died from massive trauma to her neck and spine. The mountain lion's killing bite had been instantly fatal. The investigation revealed that Lisa had inadvertently interrupted the mountain lion's hunt, triggering the attack that cost her life. The mountain lion was tracked and euthanized the following day after being located in the foothills above the neighborhood. Then there was Felicity Grant's story, which unfolded on August 19, 2017. She arrived at Boulder County Open Space in Colorado, a vast wilderness area known for its rugged terrain and diverse wildlife. The mountainous region stretches across thousands of acres of dense forest and winding trails, attracting outdoor enthusiasts. These wilderness areas also serve as prime habitat for mountain lions and other dangerous predators. Felicity Grant, a 39-year-old fitness influencer from Denver with over 5,000 social media followers, had planned what she called her ultimate wilderness transformation experience. Known for her entitled attitude and belief that her athletic superiority made her exempt from rules, she had already caused multiple confrontations at the park entrance. Her demanding personality became evident when she berated the teenage park attendant for suggesting she read safety guidelines, claiming someone of her fitness level didn't need advice from minimum wage employees. Park Ranger Tom Bradley had attempted to brief Felicity on recent mountain lion activity during her permit application process. The area had experienced multiple cougar sightings over the previous month, including aggressive encounters that resulted in temporary trail closure. Felicity became increasingly hostile, interrupting Tom repeatedly. "I've often thought about the arrogance of assuming we're somehow exempt from the natural world." Felicity, as they called her, seemed to believe she was. She'd been warned about solo hiking at dawn on Rabbit Ears Pass Trail. People told her about the dangers, about the wildlife. She dismissed them all. She even tore down warning notices, claiming taxpayers like her had every right to use public trails. But nature doesn't care about your tax bracket. Mountain lions are apex predators, perfectly adapted for mountainous terrain. Males can reach over 8 ft in length and weigh up to 180 kg. They can leap 40 feet in a single bound. Their claws can grow to 4 inches. Their canine teeth are perfectly designed to sever a spinal cord. They're ambush predators, preferring to attack from behind, and they're drawn to erratic movement, heavy breathing, and signs of distress. Felicity began her solo run at 5:30 a.m., deliberately choosing the pre-dawn hours to avoid other hikers. She wore noise-canceling headphones, blasting electronic music. She even carried raw steaks in her backpack for a post-workout protein meal. The erratic running, the heavy breathing, the scent of fresh meat. It was the perfect invitation. A 140-pound male mountain lion, already hunting in the area, detected the scent from over a mile away and began tracking her. He stalked her along the ridge, using the rocks and trees as cover. As Felicity rounded a bend, the mountain lion positioned himself on a boulder 15 feet above the path. Completely unaware because of her loud music and the arrogant belief that her fitness made her invulnerable, Felicity ran directly beneath him. The mountain lion launched himself in a devastating aerial attack. He struck her from behind with tremendous force. His hind claws raked down her back, his front paws wrapped around her shoulders and neck. His 4-inch canine teeth found their target, clamping down on the back of Felicity's neck with surgical precision. The attack severed the connection between her brain and body instantly. The bite fractured the vertebrae, causing immediate paralysis. The cougar maintained his grip, continuing to rake her spine and legs. Within 2 minutes, Felicity was dead. The cause was a combination of spinal cord severance, massive blood loss, and suffocation. The mountain lion dragged her body off the trail to a secluded area where he could feed. Her body was discovered 3 days later by a search and rescue team. The location and condition of the remains confirmed the mountain lion attack. It was December 3, 2014, when fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the kennels at the county animal shelter. A 25-year-old veterinary student named Jennifer Walsh moved between the cages. She believed every animal deserved a second chance. As a weekend volunteer, she had a reputation for advocating for the shelter's most difficult cases, the aggressive ones, the animals marked with red cards indicating immediate euthanization. The dog that would cost Jennifer her life was Diesel, a 75-pound pit bull with a scarred muzzle and eyes that seemed to hold years of rage. He'd been surrendered after multiple bite incidents, including a severe attack on a neighbor's child. He was deemed too dangerous for adoption, scheduled for euthanization. But Jennifer had been watching Diesel for 3 days, looking for signs of the gentle soul she believed existed beneath his aggressive exterior. She saw him pace, heard him growl, watched him destroy every toy. But she also noticed what she interpreted as vulnerability. Moments when he pressed against the back wall, softening when he thought no one was watching. The shelter's protocol was clear. Dogs like Diesel were never to be handled alone. But Jennifer had convinced herself that Diesel's aggression was fear-based, that what he needed was one-on-one attention. On that December afternoon, with most staff busy, Jennifer made the decision that would cost her her life. She approached Diesel. There are moments that haunt me, even years later. Jennifer's story is one of those. A young woman, driven by compassion, lost her life because of a fatal misjudgment. She wanted to save animals, but she didn't fully understand the danger she faced. I've read the reports, the details etched in my memory. She approached Diesel, a 75-pound dog, in his kennel with a slip lead and the key to the isolation room. It was a small, windowless space meant for behavioral evaluations. Diesel's reaction was immediate and threatening. His lips pulled back, revealing yellowed teeth. Hackles rose along his neck, and a low growl rumbled from his chest. Every aspect of his body language screamed danger, but Jennifer interpreted these signs as fear rather than aggression. That's the part that always gets to me. The moment the kennel door opened, Diesel's demeanor shifted from threatening to something almost calculating. He seemed to assess Jennifer's position in the open doorway behind her. This brief hesitation gave Jennifer a false sense of confidence, enough to slip the lead around his neck and guide him toward the isolation room. Once inside, Jennifer closed the door and removed Diesel's lead, believing freedom of movement would somehow help him relax. The room itself was small, just 8 by 10 feet, with concrete walls and nothing inside but a metal folding chair. It was designed for safety, but it also meant there was nowhere to run. For several minutes, Diesel stood rigid in the center, his eyes never leaving Jennifer's face. She sat in the chair and began talking to him, her voice gentle and encouraging, completely unaware that she was being evaluated by a predator. The attack came when Jennifer stood and took a step toward Diesel, her hand extended in what she intended as a peaceful gesture. But to Diesel, the movement represented a threat demanding immediate action. He launched his 75 pounds across the room with explosive force, his jaws targeting Jennifer's throat with terrifying precision. Jennifer's scream was cut short as Diesel's teeth sank deep into her neck, crushing her windpipe and severing major blood vessels in a single bite. His jaws locked onto their target with mechanical efficiency. Jennifer's hands clawed desperately at the dog's head, but Diesel had been bred for combat. His grip was unbreakable once engaged. The dog's powerful neck muscles allowed him to shake violently, tearing through tissue and bone while maintaining his hold. Blood sprayed across the concrete walls as Jennifer's struggles grew weaker, her body going into shock from the massive trauma. The attack was swift, brutal, and utterly without mercy. Other volunteers heard Jennifer's initial scream and rushed toward the isolation room, but the heavy door was locked from the inside. By the time they could locate the key and safely enter, Jennifer lay motionless on the concrete floor, her life ebbing away in the pool of blood. Diesel stood over her body, his muzzle stained red, his eyes still burning with the same aggressive intensity that had marked him for euthanization. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but Jennifer's injuries were beyond medical intervention. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Her dream of becoming a veterinarian ended by the very type of animal she hoped to save. Diesel was immediately sedated and euthanized, his death as swift and clinical as the attack that preceded it. The investigation that followed was thorough, but sadly predictable. Jennifer had violated multiple safety protocols, ignored clear warning signs, and placed herself in a situation that experienced professionals would have avoided. The shelter implemented new security measures, including electronic locks on isolation rooms and mandatory buddy systems for all volunteer activities. Jennifer's death became a cautionary tale in veterinary schools across the country. A reminder that good intentions and academic knowledge are no substitute for experience and proper safety protocols. Her family established a scholarship in her name, but requested that it go to students studying wildlife conservation rather than domestic animal care. A final acknowledgement that some animals, no matter how much love they're shown, remain fundamentally dangerous. It was April 17, 2018, and the humid Florida air hung heavy over the grounds of Sunshine Primate Sanctuary, a controversial facility that claimed to rescue primates while actually exploiting them for tourist photographs. The 20-acre property housed over 30 primates in substandard conditions, generating revenue through photo sessions that legitimate sanctuaries would never permit. The afternoon sun beat down on concrete enclosures where gorillas, chimpanzees, and other primates paced restlessly behind inadequate barriers. Jessica Rodriguez, a 31-year-old veterinary technician from Tampa, had visited the facility with her husband Carlos as part of what she believed was a legitimate conservation effort. Jessica had always been passionate about animal welfare, taking photos of animals throughout her career to document their care and recovery. Her genuine love for animals had driven her to pursue veterinary technology training while working nights to support herself through school. Jessica had dedicated her career to animal welfare, earning her veterinary technology degree through years of hard work and sacrifice. Her passion for primate conservation had led her to volunteer at legitimate sanctuaries and support organizations working to protect great apes in the wild. Jessica genuinely believed that her visit to Sunshine Primate Sanctuary would help promote conservation efforts through the photo she planned to take. That afternoon, Jessica was participating in what the facility marketed as an educational encounter with King, a 350-pound silverback gorilla who had been acquired from a defunct research facility. The sanctuary's minimal safety measures consisted of a chain-link barrier that separated visitors from the gorilla's enclave with no additional protection or supervision from qualified staff. Silverback gorillas are among the most powerful primates on Earth. With adult males weighing up to 400 pounds and possessing the strength of 10 grown men, these magnificent animals are highly intelligent and emotionally complex. But they're also territorial and can become extremely aggressive when they perceive threats to their domain. It's easy to underestimate the sheer power of a gorilla. They communicate through complex body language and vocalizations, and they can shift from a calm demeanor to violent behavior in an instant. Their massive hands can grip with crushing force, and their powerful jaws have sharp canine teeth capable of inflicting severe wounds. I remember reading about a tragic incident involving a woman named Jessica at the Sunshine Primate Sanctuary. She approached King, a 350-pound silverback gorilla, hoping to capture images that would convey the animal's intelligence and emotional depth. King appeared calm, sitting near the fence, observing the human visitors with what seemed like curiosity. Jessica began photographing him, excited about the conservation message she could share through these portraits. But then she decided to reach through the fence to touch King, believing that physical contact would create a more powerful image for her conservation advocacy. She had misinterpreted the gorilla's calm demeanor as friendliness, rather than the calculated patience of a territorial animal assessing potential threats. King's reaction was instantaneous and devastating. The moment Jessica's hand passed through the barrier, he grabbed her arm with crushing strength and pulled her against the chain-link fencing. Jessica's scream of shock and pain filled the facility as King's grip tightened with bone-crushing force. People tried desperately to free Jessica, but the gorilla's strength was far beyond human capability to overcome. King's massive hand maintained its crushing grip on Jessica's arm, while his other hand reached through the barrier to grab her head and shoulders, pulling her harder against the inadequate fencing. His territorial instincts drove him to continue the assault, his powerful hands inflicting devastating trauma to Jessica's head, neck, and arms while she remained trapped against the barrier. Jessica's attempts to break free only seemed to increase King's aggressive behavior as he interpreted her struggles as continued threats to his territory. Jessica's movements grew weaker as massive blood loss and crushing injuries overwhelmed her body. King's grip never loosened as he continued to pull her against the barrier, his territorial fury focused entirely on eliminating what he perceived as an intrusion into his domain. Within minutes, Jessica's struggle ceased as King's brutal assault proved fatal. The massive gorilla maintained his grip on her lifeless form while displaying threatening behavior toward anyone who approached the enclave. Emergency responders arrived with tranquilizer equipment, but Jessica was already dead from massive trauma. The investigation revealed that Sunshine Primate Sanctuary had been operating as an illegal roadside zoo, exploiting both animals and visitors for profit while providing inadequate safety means and animal care. The facility was immediately raided and shut down by state authorities, with all primates relocated to legitimate sanctuaries. King was transferred to an accredited facility with proper containment and enrichment programs where he could live out his remaining years in conditions appropriate for his species. Jessica's death prompted enhanced regulations for facilities claiming to operate as animal sanctuaries and stricter enforcement of existing wildlife protection laws. Jessica's family established a foundation supporting legitimate primate conservation efforts, ensuring that her genuine passion for animal welfare would continue through organizations that truly protected great apes rather than exploiting them for profit. Now let's turn to another tragic encounter, this time in North Carolina. It was March 18, 2017, and the upscale Asheville neighborhood of Mountain View Estates was experiencing the first warm evening of spring. The residential development, built on the slopes of the Blue Ridge Mountains, featured large lots with mature trees and natural landscaping that blended seamlessly with the surrounding forest. Maria Santos, a 41-year-old single mother and part-time dog walker, was making her evening rounds through the neighborhood's winding streets, caring for the pets of wealthy residents who relied on her services. Maria had been working as a professional dog walker for 3 years, building a loyal clientele among Mountain View Estates' affluent homeowners who appreciated her reliability and genuine love of animals. She often walked multiple dogs simultaneously, managing up to 6 animals at once while maintaining perfect control and ensuring each pet received individual attention. Maria's income from dog walking helped supplement her day job at a local veterinary clinic, allowing her to support her teenage daughter as a single parent. The Mountain View Estates development had been carved out of pristine mountain forest, with builders required to preserve mature trees and maintain natural wildlife corridors throughout the community. Recent construction of additional homes had disrupted established animal movement patterns, forcing bears, deer, and other wildlife to seek new routes through residential areas. The North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission had issued warnings about increased bear activity in mountain communities, particularly as animals emerged from winter hibernation. Maria was aware of the wildlife warnings, but had never encountered any dangerous animals during her 3 years of walking dogs in the neighborhood. She carried pepper spray as a precaution and had received training on wildlife encounters from the local animal control office. On this particular evening, she was walking 3 large dogs, 2 German shepherds and a golden retriever along the community's main street when she noticed unusual activity near a row of garbage cans. Black bears are North America's most common bear species, with adult females typically weighing between 200 and 400 pounds. Mother bears with cubs are extremely protective and will attack any perceived threat to their offspring. Bears have an excellent sense of smell, a fact that sometimes leads them into residential areas. They're drawn by the scent of garbage, pet food, anything that seems appealing. And when surprised, you should know they can run up to 35 miles per hour. They have the strength to break down doors, overturn cars. Their claws and teeth, well, they can inflict devastating injuries. I remember reading about a woman named Maria. She was walking her dogs one morning when she approached an intersection where garbage cans had been placed for pickup. There, she saw a 300-pound female black bear with 2 cubs rummaging through the containers. The mother bear had torn open bags and was feeding on discarded food while her cubs played nearby. Maria, to her credit, immediately recognized the danger and began backing away slowly, but her dogs became agitated and started barking aggressively at the bears. The mother bear's protective instincts were immediately triggered. She perceived the barking dogs as a direct threat to her cubs. She rose to her full height and began making aggressive vocalizations, positioning herself between the dogs and her offspring. Maria tried to control the dogs and retreat, but they continued barking and lunging, escalating the situation. The mother bear charged toward Maria and the dogs with explosive speed, covering the 30 yards between them in seconds. Maria tried to run while holding the leashes, but became entangled and fell hard onto the asphalt. The dogs scattered, leaving Maria vulnerable as the enraged bear approached. The bear's massive paws struck Maria's back and shoulders, driving her face first into the pavement. Her weight pinned Maria to the ground. The bear's powerful jaws clamped down on Maria's head and neck, teeth puncturing through skull bone and severing vital arteries. Maria's attempts to protect herself proved futile against such strength. The bear's razor-sharp claws raked across Maria's torso and limbs, opening deep gashes. The attack was methodical, driven by maternal instincts. Maria's struggles grew weaker as trauma and blood loss overwhelmed her. Residents heard the commotion and called 911 while trying to scare the bear away. The mother bear eventually retreated with her cubs toward the forest, leaving Maria motionless on the street. Paramedics arrived quickly but couldn't save her. The investigation revealed that improperly secured garbage containers had attracted the bears, creating the conditions for the fatal encounter. Wildlife officials determined that the bear had been acting defensively. The bears were relocated to a remote mountain area. Maria's death prompted changes to waste management protocols, including bear-proof garbage containers, wildlife early warning systems, and requirements to remove attractants from properties. It was October 15, 2016. The Georgia sun was setting over Rebecca Martinez's 10-acre property, casting long shadows across kennels. The constant barking of 40 rescue dogs echoed across the land. It had become the soundtrack of her life. At 34, Rebecca had spent 8 years building her unofficial sanctuary, taking in dogs that other shelters wouldn't touch, the aggressive ones, the biters, the animals marked for euthanization. Her recent divorce had left her financially strained and emotionally isolated, with only her dogs for company. Rebecca's neighbors had grown used to the noise, though some whispered concerns about the woman who seemed to care more about dangerous animals than her own safety. She rarely left the property anymore, moving between enclosures with hands scarred from countless bites. Friends who still visited noticed the changes in her. She'd grown thinner, more withdrawn, speaking more about her dogs than anything else. Her ex-husband had tried to warn her about the dangers, but she dismissed his concerns. Even the feed delivery drivers had begun leaving supplies at the gate rather than approaching the compound. The main enclosure housed her 3 largest rescues: Rex, a 90-pound pit bull mix; Titan, an 85-pound Rottweiler cross; and Scar, a 75-pound mixed breed. What Rebecca didn't realize was that these 3 had been forming an alliance, establishing a hierarchy that put them at odds with anyone who came between them and food. The warning signs had been there for anyone trained to recognize them. The 3 dogs had begun sleeping closer together, sharing food bowls and displaying coordinated territorial behavior when other dogs approached. They'd started following Rebecca's movements more intently during feeding times, their body language shifting from grateful anticipation to something more predatory. But Rebecca, exhausted from managing 40 animals alone and emotionally invested in seeing progress. I've always been drawn to stories where the familiar suddenly turns menacing, where trust is broken in the most brutal way. There's a case from a few years ago that still haunts me. Rebecca, a rescuer who dedicated her life to dogs, lost hers to the very animals she tried to save. It's a stark reminder of how easily things can go wrong, how quickly the line between savior and prey can blur. Rebecca's daily feeding routine was the most dangerous part of her day. She would fill 5 buckets with kibble, the metallic clanging sending the dogs into a frenzy of anticipation. The ground was still wet from an afternoon thunderstorm. As she approached the main enclosure, buckets in hand, the 3 large dogs pressed against the fence, their eyes locked on the food, muscles tense. She had done this thousands of times before, but this time felt different. The air seemed charged with something more than just humidity. As Rebecca unlatched the gate and stepped into the enclosure, her worn boots slipped on the muddy ground. She stumbled, trying to regain her balance, but the weight of the buckets pulled her down. The metal containers crashed to the earth, spilling kibble across the wet dirt. Rex was the first to move, but as Rebecca struggled to get back on her feet, something in his demeanor shifted. His eyes, which had been focused on the kibble, now locked onto her. At that moment, she wasn't the woman who had saved him. She was competition. The attack came without warning. Rex's 90 pounds of muscle slammed into Rebecca's chest, driving her back to the ground. His jaws clamped down on her shoulder, tearing through flesh with devastating force. Rebecca's scream pierced the evening air, but there was no one around for miles to hear it. Titan and Scar joined the assault within seconds, their pack instincts overriding years of rehabilitation. Titan's massive jaws found her left arm, shaking violently. Scar circled behind, his teeth sinking into her legs, dragging her further from the gate. Rebecca fought desperately, her free hand clawing at Rex's face, trying to break his grip. But the dogs were in full predatory mode now, their attacks coordinated and relentless. Blood soaked into the muddy ground as they continued their assault, their growls mixing with Rebecca's weakening cries. The feeding frenzy lasted nearly 10 minutes before the dogs finally backed away. Rebecca lay motionless in the mud, her body broken and torn, surrounded by the scattered kibble that had triggered the attack. For 3 days, Rebecca's body remained undiscovered on the isolated property. It wasn't until a delivery driver arrived with dog food that the scene was uncovered. Animal control officers found the 3 attacking dogs still in the enclosure, showing no signs of continued aggression. Rex, Titan, and Scar were euthanized within hours, along with 12 other dogs deemed too dangerous for relocation. Rebecca's death sparked debates about unlicensed rescue operations. New regulations were implemented, requiring permits for anyone housing more than 10 rescue animals. But for those who knew Rebecca, the rules came too late. It always feels like that, doesn't it? Too late. Then there's Camille Morel. It was April 3, 2017, in Thor, France. Inside the Thor Zoo Safari Park, the wolf sector adjacent to the bison paddock, meant to mimic the wild stillness of Yellowstone, seemed calm. Yet within the shadows of its pines, something alive and waiting stirred. A quiet rhythm of movement that would soon break that silence for good. Camille Morel was 29, a fitness instructor from Versailles who lived by routine. Known among her clients for her precision and self-discipline, she maintained the same training schedule no matter where she was. After 6 months of non-stop classes at her studio, she decided to spend a weekend at the Thor Zoo Safari, one of the few places near Paris offering guests an overnight wilderness immersion without leaving the country. It wasn't her first visit. She'd stayed once before and remembered the tranquility of waking to animal sounds instead of traffic. She booked the chalet not just for rest, but to keep her running habit intact in the open air. To friends, Camille's decision made sense. The park's trails and guest roads were well marked and safe during visiting hours. She'd read the safety pamphlet about restricted areas and believed her familiarity with the grounds made her cautious enough. Her chalet overlooked the fenced wolf sector adjacent to the bison range, a layout designed to reduce mixed species stress and liability during guest drives. The animals were separated by natural barriers and double fence zones, and guests were told the viewing area was completely secure. Camille trusted the system. Her goal that morning was simple: a quick 2-mile jog before breakfast, the same as she did every morning at home. The zoo's landscape was a strange fusion of natural calm and controlled wilderness. Pine trees in neat clusters, sandy trails, and an artificial stream running through the land. At dawn, the service road and the inner track appeared nearly identical, a known issue in drive-through parks where early light flattens contrast. Beyond the chalet's edge stretched a gravel service road used by rangers and tour jeeps. The wolves' territory extended across nearly 20 acres of wooded ground. Gray wolves, the largest of the canids, can weigh over 100 pounds and run up to 35 miles per hour for short bursts. Pack behavior revolves around cooperation and hierarchy. Most attacks on humans occur only when the animals feel threatened, cornered, or see unusual movement that triggers pursuit. In captivity, stress or broken boundaries can alter those instincts. That morning, a scheduled maintenance check had delayed some of the park's early operations. Workers had opened an internal service gate near the chalet to move a small utility vehicle through. Overnight, frost had iced the latch mechanism, preventing full engagement of the double lock, and when one of the workers received a call about a mechanical issue elsewhere, he left under maintenance override without confirming it was secure. The gate's interlock was meant to be re-engaged once staff passed, a step that failed. Around 7 a.m., Camille stepped outside with her phone and a small water bottle. She jogged down the gravel path that bordered the guest area, seeing no posted signs. I've read accounts of what happened that day, and one detail always sticks with me. The wolves didn't charge at first. They emerged from the trees, low to the ground, tails stiff, heads aligned. It's a posture that speaks of calculation, of assessment. It wasn't blind aggression, but something far more deliberate. Camille, the jogger, she slowed, confused. She'd seen the wolves before, behind fences, and the thought the barrier must be nearby. But then they began advancing in a slow, deliberate arc, and that shift in posture made her freeze. She turned, saw the empty stretch of gravel behind her, and started jogging back, faster this time. The wolves matched her pace, then accelerated, paws thudding against the dirt. She broke into a sprint. The zookeeper, watching from above, saw Camille glance back once. Near a drainage trench, her foot caught on the uneven gravel, and she fell forward, hitting hard. Before she could push herself up, the lead wolf clamped down on her right thigh, pulling backward with a violent jerk. She twisted, trying to kick free, but another wolf lunged at her shoulder. Her scream carried across the enclosure, high and ragged. The zookeeper in the tower sounded the alarm and radioed the rangers. The response vehicle was rerouted around the inner fence lines, delaying arrival to just under 10 minutes, which was within normal range for a keeper-initiated emergency call. 2 more wolves joined, surrounding her as she tried to crawl toward the ditch. The lead wolf released and re-gripped higher, its teeth sinking into her hip. She struck out with her hands, scraping the gravel, trying to push herself forward, but one of the animals bit into her arm, shaking until it tore free. Within moments, she was on her back, thrashing as the pack pulled from opposite sides. She kicked weakly once more, then went still. Rangers arrived within 10 minutes in a vehicle. They found the wolves clustered over Camille's body, heads low and jaws working. Warning shots sent the pack scattering into the trees. Two rangers approached as another called for a tranquilizer team. Camille lay on her side, clothing torn, deep bites from shoulder to thigh. One ranger checked for a pulse and found none. They covered her with a thermal blanket and secured the area until all 5 wolves were sedated. An autopsy confirmed death by exsanguination, massive blood loss due to multiple deep lacerations, and crushing trauma to the limbs. The body was transported under escort. That afternoon, Camille's family filed a civil lawsuit against the Thori Zoo Safari and its parent company, alleging gross negligence and breach of safety protocol. After a year of investigation and hearings, the court ruled in favor of the family. The park quietly settled without appeal. Following the incident, a criminal negligence inquiry and an independent enclos audit were conducted. Thori Zoo Safari implemented procedural retrofits, installing interlocks and alarms that trigger if any gate remains unlatched for more than 15 seconds. It was July 22, 2016, and the scorching Oklahoma sun beat down on the dusty grounds of Wild Art Big Hat Sanctuary, a privately owned facility nestled among rolling hills 30 miles outside Tulsa. The 50-acre property housed over 20 rescued lions, tigers, and other exotic cats in a collection of chain-link enclos that stretched across the rural landscape. The afternoon air shimmered with heat while the distant sounds of roaring and pacing echoed from various habitats as the cats sought shade from the oppressive summer temperatures. Ashley Martinez, a 23-year-old college student from Dallas, had discovered the sanctuary through social media while road tripping with her boyfriend Jake through Oklahoma's quirky roadside attractions. Ashley was constantly seeking unique photo opportunities for her personal memories, having grown up taking pictures at every family vacation and special event. Her phone was filled with daredevil shots from cliff edges, abandoned buildings, and extreme sports activities that showcased her fearless personality to friends and family. Ashley had grown up in suburban Dallas as the youngest of 3 sisters, developing a competitive streak that drove her to constantly push boundaries and seek attention through increasingly dramatic stunts. Her psychology major at Texas Tech University had given her confidence in reading people and situations, but her academic knowledge didn't extend to understanding animal behavior. That afternoon, Ashley and Jacob paid the sanctuary's fee for a close encounter experience that promised visitors the chance to observe big cats during feeding demonstrations and educational presentations. The facility operated in a legal gray area, offering interactions that legitimate zoos and accredited sanctuaries would never permit. African lions are apex predators that retain all their wild instincts regardless of human contact or hand-rearing. Adult males can weigh up to 420 pounds and possess incredible strength, speed, and territorial behaviors that make them extremely dangerous in captivity. Lions are social animals with complex hierarchies, but they view humans as either threats to be eliminated or prey to be consumed. Their powerful jaws can deliver bite forces exceeding 650 pounds per square inch, while their razor-sharp claws can inflict fatal wounds with a single swipe. I've seen the ultimate photo turn into a nightmare more than once. A woman named Ashley learned that lesson in a truly horrific way. She was visiting a wildlife sanctuary, and there was one animal she wanted to get close to: Caesar, a 400-pound African lion. Ashley watched the feeding demonstration, listening to the sanctuary owner's stories, and as the tour ended, she saw her chance. She asked her friend Jake to distract the owner while she climbed over the barrier for a selfie with Caesar. Jake kept the owner busy, and Ashley quietly approached Caesar's enclos, climbing over the 4-foot chain-link fence. The massive lion was resting about 10 feet away, his golden eyes following her, but showing no obvious aggression. Ashley crouched down and held out her phone, ready to capture the moment. But as she moved closer, Caesar's demeanor changed. His ears flattened slightly, and his tail began to twitch. Then, with explosive suddenness, his predatory instincts kicked in. Millions of years of evolution recognized Ashley as prey in his territory. The 400-pound lion launched himself at her. Her phone flew from her hand as Caesar's paws struck her chest, driving her backward. His claws tore into her torso and shoulders. Then his jaws clamped down on her neck, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae. Caesar's territorial instincts drove him to continue the assault, his claws raking across her body, his bite crushing her throat. Ashley's movements grew weaker as she lost massive amounts of blood and suffered spinal trauma. Jake's screams brought the sanctuary owner running, but Caesar's posture over his kill made intervention too dangerous. Ashley was gone within minutes. Emergency responders arrived within 30 minutes, but it was too late. The investigation revealed that the facility was operating without proper permits and insurance, violating safety regulations. Caesar was relocated to an accredited sanctuary. Ashley's death devastated her family and led her university to implement enhanced safety education for students traveling during breaks. The incident also led to stricter regulations for private exotic animal facilities in Oklahoma. Then there's the story of Giovanni Russo. It was May 21, 2018, in Gran Paradiso National Park, northern Italy. A small expedition of 4 had finished dinner beside a dying fire, leaving one storage bag unsealed near the cooking area. Giovanni, 38, had worked those slopes for over a decade. He was a certified alpine guide, and with his wife Elena, he led small trekking tours. He'd grown up in Aosta and spent most of his life navigating the same valleys where his father once herded sheep. The Gran Paradiso region had become a renewed focal point for conservation, and wolves had returned after decades of absence. Giovanni respected that, but he didn't fear it. He saw himself as part of the balance between humans and wildlife. The couple's guiding company specialized in remote routes with minimal disturbance, and Giovanni often told clients that predators avoided people. The trek that weekend was routine, a mild ascent and one night at a designated campsite near the meadow of Almany. His clients, a pair of mid-aged hikers from Milan, had little experience in backcountry settings, but they trusted the couple completely. That night, one of them had left a pack of trail mix open near the fire pit, and scraps from dinner were tossed into the same area. Wolves in this region averaged between 60 and 70 pounds, with lean gray coats blending into the forest. Normally nocturnal, they hunted red deer and chamois in coordinated packs. But in recent years, rangers had observed bolder juveniles venturing closer to human camps, especially when food waste was left accessible. Just before dawn, around 4 a.m., Elena woke to soft rustling, first near the cooking area, then a faint growl, low and uncertain. She thought it was a fox at first, until she saw several silhouettes clustered around the fire pit, where the unsealed food bag now lay torn open. She whispered for Giovanni, who unzipped his sleeping bag and grabbed his flashlight. He stepped outside alone, the cold air hitting his face, and walked 10, maybe 50 feet toward the food zone. The beam of his flashlight caught 3 wolves standing over scattered wrappers and crumbs. He shouted and waved his light, but they didn't scatter. One stepped forward, hackles raised, its paws firm on the ground. Giovanni shouted again, clapping his hands as he took another step forward, closing the distance. The older female lunged, nipping at his forearm in a defensive snap. Giovanni jerked back, but the young one followed through, clamping down near his elbow. The bite struck deep, severing tissue. He fell backward, blood pulsing through his injuries. The wolves held their ground, uncertain now, circling the dropped food bag. Elena tore from the tent with a burning stick from the fire pit. I've spent years reading accounts of human encounters with the natural world, and some stories stay with you. The Lawson family's trip to Sundarbans National Park is one of those. A UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's a vast mangrove delta where the Ganges meets the Bay of Bengal. This place harbors saltwater crocodiles, venomous snakes, and the world's largest population of Bengal tigers. It was here, on July 15, 2016, that a family's vacation turned into a nightmare. Genevieve Lawson, a 42-year-old real estate agent, insisted on booking the most expensive tour. She was, by all accounts, a demanding woman and had already berated their guide, Ravi, several times. Her husband, David, tried to calm her while their teenage children, Emma and Jake, looked on uncomfortably as their mother dismissed every safety warning. Ravi, despite his 15 years of experience, felt intimidated by her constant threats and demands for closer wildlife encounters. The boat had safety barriers, but Genevieve viewed them as obstacles to the authentic jungle photographs she wanted. These tigers, unlike their mainland cousins, are exceptional swimmers and have an unusual willingness to hunt humans in water. Weighing up to 400 pounds and measuring over 10 feet long, they possess 4-inch canine teeth capable of crushing windpipes. During the afternoon tour, Ravi spotted fresh tiger tracks. He cut the engine, whispering for silence, explaining that a large male tiger had recently passed through the area. But Genevieve, frustrated by the distance, stepped over the safety barrier and into the chest-deep water. She wanted closer photographs, despite the protests. Unbeknownst to them, a massive 400-pound male Bengal tiger had been resting nearby, detecting their boat's engine. These tigers are ambush predators using water to hunt. This particular tiger had killed humans before and recognized the sounds of vulnerable prey entering its territory. The tiger slipped into the water and began swimming toward Genevieve, with only its eyes and nose visible. When she reached the shoreline and began photographing the tracks, she was completely unaware of the approaching predator. The tiger closed the final 20 feet underwater, attacking with explosive violence. It surfaced behind her, clamping its jaws around her throat, its teeth crushing her windpipe with over 1,000 pounds of force. The tiger's signature killing technique involved suffocating prey. Genevieve's body went rigid as major blood vessels in her neck were severed, causing massive internal bleeding. The tiger pulled her backward into deeper water, holding her in an inescapable grip. I've seen the aftermath of animal attacks, the grim evidence left behind. Genevieve's death. It was brutal. A tiger in the mangroves crushing her windpipe, severing arteries, holding her underwater until she lost consciousness. It took only minutes. The tiger didn't release her body until long after, November 15, 2016. the remote forests of Primorsky Krai, eastern Russia. I can almost see the scene, snow falling, muffling the sounds of the forest. Nikolai Baranov, 52, a forestry worker, had been silent on the radio since morning. He spent most of his life in those forests. He monitored traps, logging boundaries, poaching activity near the Cody Allen Mountains. He lived alone near Dalner, his life attuned to the forest's rhythm. That week he was surveying a hunting reserve, checking on reports of wolves approaching villages. He rode out on his snowmobile before dawn, carrying bread, tea, an axe, and flares. His colleagues said he preferred working alone. He claimed a second engine scared off wildlife. That day's task was simple: document animal tracks after the first full snow. Wolves had been increasingly active, driven from higher ground after a collapse in wild boar numbers. These wolves could travel up to 20 miles in a single night, driven by hunger across the frozen ground. Their diets shifted with the seasons: deer in autumn, carrion, smaller mammals. In the hard winter months, when prey vanished beneath ice and snow, instinct could turn to desperation. A human scent, unfamiliar, might trigger the same ancient reflex to follow, to test, to close the distance. The locals warned of animals following sled trails at dusk. Nikolai heard the warnings that morning, but didn't take them seriously. He checked his flare gun, but left his rifle behind, citing its weight. By noon, the weather shifted rapidly, with gusting snow and dropping visibility. His supervisor made several radio attempts, but received no answer, likely due to battery failure in the cold. As evening approached and Nikolai still hadn't returned, Yevgen, a neighboring ranger and longtime friend, prepared to follow his route before dark. Yevgen rode out around 5 p.m., flashlight mounted on his snowmobile, a sidearm holstered under his coat. The tracks were faint but visible. A single snowmobile line winding north, then stopping abruptly about 800 meters from the ridge. The engine was half buried in the snow, its headlight still dimly glowing. The track showed that Nikolai had dismounted, perhaps to clear ice. Around the site, another pattern emerged: paw marks, deep and overlapping, circling. The snow bore drag lines, evidence of pacing. Then the circle tightened. From that point, the scene unfolded in what Yevgen later described as a sequence of struggle. Human footprints turned erratic, moving backward. A snapped branch at chest height and a torn glove 10 feet away. A smear of blood marked the snowmobile's side panel. 30 feet beyond, the snow showed clear impressions of multiple bodies pressing down. Wolves and man. The wolves had likely approached silently, using the cover of snowfall and wind. Initial bites were to the legs, pulling him down. Blood spray against nearby birch bark indicated arterial injury within seconds. As the attack progressed, the evidence suggested coordinated movement. Bite patterns indicated coordinated restraint from multiple angles. His jacket was shredded along the spine, showing where one animal had clamped onto his back while another tore at his neck. Boot prints ended mid-stride, replaced by drag marks. Yevgen followed them cautiously, revolver drawn. The forest was unnervingly still. He found the body 30 meters downhill near a frozen stream. The snow around it was flattened and red. The wolves had likely fed briefly before retreating. Later investigations showed at least 4 individuals, 2 larger adults, 2 smaller juveniles. Yevgen radioed the base immediately. It took nearly an hour for a snow vehicle from the nearest post to arrive, by which time darkness had swallowed the clearing. The men lifted the body onto a tarp, careful not to disturb the bite patterns for analysis. The stench of blood lingered even in the cold. The pack didn't return, but distant howls echoed as the rescuers secured the area. Nikolai's remains were taken to Dalner for examination. The autopsy confirmed catastrophic blood loss, multiple punctures to major vessels, and crushing trauma to the neck vertebrae, consistent with a fatal bite. Time of death was estimated shortly after the onset of the attack. The official report listed predatory behavior exacerbated by winter scarcity. Specialists noted that 2016 saw an unusual decline in prey density across the region. The incident received a single mention on regional news, framed as a tragic encounter during severe weather. There was no footage, only photographs from the recovery team that were never released publicly. June 14, 2015. Sunset Lake Subdivision in suburban Tampa, Florida. Another warm summer evening. The gated community, built around interconnected retention ponds and decorative canals, marketed as a tropical paradise for retirees. Walter Walt Kowalski, 67, a retired plumber from Ohio, was enjoying his 5th year in the Sunshine State. I've always been struck by how little some creatures have changed over vast stretches of time. American alligators, for instance, have remained virtually unchanged for over 200 million years. Perfectly adapted as ambush hunters in aquatic environments. It's a testament to the power of natural selection, but also a chilling reminder of the dangers lurking in seemingly familiar places. Walt, recently retired, had moved to Florida, lured by the promise of year-round golf and fishing, a life previously impossible during those harsh Ohio winters. He bought a modest ranch home with direct water access, a private dock where he could fish and feed the ducks who became regular visitors. His routine involved sitting on his patio with a cold beer, watching the sunset reflect off the calm water, tossing breadcrumbs to the waterfowl. The Sunset Lakes community, built on reclaimed wetlands, featured retention ponds and canals to manage storm runoff while creating attractive water features. These artificial waterways connected to natural creek systems that flowed into Tampa Bay, creating corridors for wildlife to move between developed and undeveloped areas. Recent heavy rains had raised water levels, increasing wildlife activity. Walt had noticed more alligators, but like most Florida residents, he'd learned to coexist with them. Walt's duck feeding had created a reliable food source, attracting waterfowl from throughout the area. Little did he know he was also attracting something far more dangerous. Adult male alligators can reach lengths of 14 feet and weights exceeding 1,000 pounds, with jaw muscles capable of exerting over 3,000 pounds of pres per square inch. They are opportunistic feeders, consuming birds, fish, mammals, and occasionally humans who venture too close. One evening, Walt was relaxing on his patio when he noticed his favorite fishing lure tangled in vegetation near his dock. He waded into the knee-deep water, using a long-handled net to free the snagged lure. He had done this many times without incident, confident the shallow water was safe. The attack came from directly beneath him. A 12-foot male alligator, submerged motionless near the dock for over an hour, waiting for ducks, exploded upward. Its jaws clamped on Walt's right leg with bone-crushing power, instantly fracturing the femur and severing major arteries. The alligator initiated its signature death roll, spinning rapidly while maintaining its grip. The violent rotation dislocated Walt's hip and pulled him fully into the canal, where the shader's natural advantages became overwhelming. The alligator dragged Walt toward the deeper center, where its superior swimming ability and underwater endurance made escape impossible. Within minutes, Walt's movements ceased, overwhelmed by drowning and massive blood loss. Emergency responders arrived within 10 minutes of the call, but the alligator had already retreated with Walt's body. Police and wildlife officers worked through the night to locate and capture the reptile, extracting both the alligator and Walt's remains. The investigation revealed Walt's regular duck feeding had inadvertently attracted the alligator, creating a dangerous situation that culminated in the fatal attack. Walt's death prompted immediate changes to the community's water safety protocols, including warning signs around all retention ponds and canals. It was September 8, 2014. The Florida Everglades stretched endlessly under the blazing sun. Sawgrass prairies and cypress swamps teemed with wildlife, some of America's most dangerous. Remote waterways near Tamiami Trail buzzed with airboat tours, carrying tourists deep into alligator territory. Michael Chen, a 35-year-old software engineer from Seattle, was on his first visit to Florida, celebrating a recent promotion with a cross-country road trip. Michael had always been fascinated by technology and outdoor adventure, spending weekends hiking in the Pacific Northwest Mountains. His engineering background gave him confidence in analyzing risks and solving problems, but his experience with dangerous wildlife was limited to bears and mountain lions that could be avoided through precautions. Michael had grown up in urban Seattle, developing his love of nature through weekend camping trips. His methodical approach to problem-solving had made him successful, but it had also given him perhaps too much confidence in his ability to assess and manage dangerous situations. Michael enjoyed taking photos of his travels. That afternoon, Michael joined a small group airboat tour promising close encounters with alligators and other Everglades wildlife. The tour guide, a weathered Floridian with decades of swamp experience, repeatedly warned passengers to remain seated and keep hands inside the boat. American alligators are apex predators that have remained virtually unchanged for over 200 million years. I'll never forget reading about the alligator's bite. 3,000 pounds of pres per square inch. It's a force that can shatter bones instantly. Alligators, perfectly adapted for aquatic ambushes, can reach up to 14 feet in length and weigh over 1,000 pounds. They see any movement near their territory as either food or a threat. An airboat tour was going smoothly when the guide pointed out a massive alligator basking on a mudbank, about 20 feet away. The reptile was huge, maybe 12 feet long and 800 pounds. It was utterly still in the afternoon heat, a truly prehistoric sight. One of the passengers, Michael, started taking pictures, excited to show his colleagues back in Seattle, but he got too eager, leaning way over the edge of the boat for a better shot. That's when his phone slipped, falling toward the water. Without thinking, Michael lunged, trying to catch it before it disappeared into the swamp. The alligator, which had been watching the boat with a predator's patience, saw Michael's movement and attacked. The 800-pound reptile exploded from the mudbank with incredible speed, its powerful tail propelling it through the water like a missile aimed right at Michael. The alligator's jaws clamped down on Michael's arm with bone-crushing force. That 3,000-pound bite instantly shattered bones and severed arteries. Michael's scream echoed across the swamp as the reptile's momentum pulled him into the murky water. The tour guide and other passengers grabbed Michael's legs, trying to pull him back into the boat, but the alligator held on tight. It began its signature death roll, spinning rapidly while maintaining its grip. Michael's struggles weakened as blood loss, crushing injuries, and drowning took their toll. The alligator never loosened its grip, continuing the death roll with brutal precision, each rotation causing more trauma. Within minutes, Michael stopped moving. The alligator dragged his body into deeper water and disappeared beneath the surface with its kill. Emergency responders arrived within the hour, but Michael's body wasn't recovered until the next day, when wildlife officials found the alligator and retrieved his remains. The tour company immediately put up barriers around the passenger seating and gave enhanced safety briefings. Michael's family pushed for stricter safety regulations in the wildlife tourism industry. The incident became a cautionary tale about the dangers of ignoring safety warnings around apex predators and prioritizing photography over personal safety. It was July 8, 2017, and the Detroit summer heat shimmered off abandoned lots as Maria Santos loaded her car with dog food and water. At 28, she'd spent 5 years walking dogs by day and feeding Detroit's feral population by night. Recently laid off, she'd been spending more time in dangerous neighborhoods, trying to help animals most people considered beyond saving. The economic collapse had hit Detroit hard, leaving entire neighborhoods abandoned and creating perfect breeding grounds for packs of wild dogs. These weren't lost pets. They were second- and third-generation feral animals that had never known human kindness, surviving by scavenging and defending territory with savage efficiency. Maria's regular route took her through 6 abandoned lots, each home to a different pack. She knew their hierarchies, feeding schedules, and individual personalities. But the newest group concerned her the most. 6 dogs led by a large German Shepherd mix she'd nicknamed Alpha, including several animals she didn't recognize. This pack was hungrier, more aggressive, and less predictable than the others, but Maria's compassion overruled her caution. These animals needed help, and she was the only one willing to provide it. As twilight settled over the abandoned neighborhood, Maria parked near the lot where Alpha's pack had made their home. The area was a wasteland of broken concrete and waist-high weeds, perfect cover for animals that had learned to hunt and hide. Maria had been feeding this pack for 3 weeks, always maintaining a safe distance. But tonight felt different. The dogs seemed more agitated, their movements more coordinated, their attention more focused on her than the food. What she didn't realize was that pack dynamics had shifted with the addition of 3 new dogs, animals that saw humans not as providers but as competitors. Alpha emerged from the shadows first, his 80-pound frame moving with predatory grace. Behind him came the others, a scarred pit bull mix, 2 smaller dogs, and 3 newcomers whose breeds were impossible to determine. Their eyes reflected the dim streetlight like mirrors. Maria began distributing food as always, tossing handfuls of kibble in different directions to prevent fighting. But tonight, the strategy backfired. Instead of dispersing to eat, the dogs began to eat. There are moments when I read of animals turning on humans that I find myself awake for hours afterward, thinking. Maria, in 2015, made the fatal mistake of stepping between 2 dogs fighting over food. She thought she was helping, but Alpha's pack instincts kicked in. To him, she wasn't the woman who had been feeding them. She was competition. His lips pulled back in a silent snarl as he launched himself at her with devastating force. Maria had no time to react. The other dogs joined within seconds, their pack mentality overriding any memory of Maria's kindness. The houses had been empty for years, their windows boarded up. She fought desperately, but 6 dogs working in coordination were more than any human could handle. Their coordinated attack spoke to generations of predatory instincts refined by years of urban survival. These weren't pets gone bad. They were wild animals that had learned to see humans as threats or prey. Maria's movements grew weaker as blood loss and shock took their toll. The dogs showed no signs of stopping, their feeding frenzy triggered by blood and the thrill of a successful hunt. By the time they finally backed away, Maria lay motionless among the weeds and debris. Her body was discovered the next morning by urban explorers. It took 3 days to capture all 6 dogs using tranquilizer guns and cage traps. The pack was euthanized within hours, their wild nature making rehabilitation impossible. Then, just a few weeks later, on September 8, 2015, Kendra Sullivan arrived at Gamba Island Chimpanzee Sanctuary in Uganda, a 100-acre forested island on Lake Victoria. The sanctuary served as a refuge for orphaned and rescued chimpanzees, providing a semi-natural environment where these intelligent primates could live in social groups. Kendra Sullivan, a 35-year-old wildlife photographer from Portland, had been commissioned by a wildlife magazine to document rehabilitation work with rescued chimpanzees. She had built her reputation capturing intimate portraits of domestic and farm animals. Her extensive experience with horses, cattle, and aggressive bulls led her to believe she possessed an innate understanding of animal behavior that transcended species boundaries. Her best friend, Amy Chen, a documentary filmmaker, had accompanied Kendra to capture behind-the-scenes footage. Dr. James Mukasa, the sanctuary's director, grew increasingly concerned as Kendra dismissed his safety briefings and demanded access to restricted maintenance areas for better photographs. Peter Sally, a caretaker, repeatedly warned about the unpredictable nature of these powerful animals. But Kendra brushed off his concerns as overcautious superstition. The sanctuary housed 49 rescued chimpanzees, many traumatized by poaching or the illegal pet trade. Despite their rehabilitation, these animals retained all the instincts and physical capabilities of their wild counterparts, making them extremely dangerous when encountered without proper barriers. Chimpanzees are among the most powerful primates on Earth, possessing strength approximately 5 times greater than that of an adult human. Adult males can weigh up to 150 pounds and stand over 4 feet tall with massive chest muscles and arms capable of exerting tremendous force. Their hands possess grip strength exceeding 2,300 pounds per square inch, enough to crush bones with ease. Most notably, chimpanzees possess large canine teeth over 2 inches long, designed for both defense and establishing dominance. During the afternoon tour, Kendra became increasingly frustrated with the viewing restrictions that prevented her from capturing authentic behavioral documentation. She had specifically requested access to maintenance areas where staff entered the enclosure for cleaning and medical care. Dr. Mukasa repeatedly explained that these areas were strictly off-limits due to the extreme danger posed by direct contact with the chimpanzees. While the group was observing chimpanzees in a distant enclave, Kendra noticed an unlocked gate leading to a maintenance corridor that provided direct access to the animal's living area. Despite explicit warnings, she slipped away from the group and entered the restricted zone, believing her experience with domestic animals had prepared her for any situation. The maintenance area brought Kendra within direct reach of Bozo, the sanctuary's dominant male, a 150-pound adult who had been rescued as an infant 15 years earlier. Bozo had shown aggressive tendencies toward unfamiliar humans and was considered one of the most dangerous animals in the facility. The powerful chimpanzee was resting near the barrier when he detected Kendra's presence. Chimpanzees are highly territorial animals that view unfamiliar humans as potential threats. Bozo immediately became agitated by Kendra's intrusion into what he considered his territory. When she approached the barrier and raised her camera to photograph him, Bozo interpreted this action as a direct challenge to his dominance. The powerful primate's response was immediate and devastating. Bozo lunged forward and grabbed Kendra's extended arm with crushing force. I've read accounts of chimpanzee attacks, and one detail always haunts me: their instinct to target faces, hands, and genitals. It's a chillingly efficient strategy for inflicting maximum damage. I remember reading about a woman named Kendra who experienced this firsthand. She was attacked by a chimpanzee named Bozo, whose bite force could reach 1,300 pounds per square inch. The force immediately fractured the bones in her forearm. Bozo pulled her against the barrier, his canine teeth over 2 inches long and razor-sharp, tearing into her face and neck. His hands ripped at her clothing, his feet kicked at her torso. The attack lasted nearly 2 minutes. Bozo bit and clawed at her face, neck, and upper body. His jaws crushed facial bones, tearing away large sections of skin and muscle. The chimpanzee's sharp teeth severed major blood vessels in her neck, causing massive bleeding. Her attempts to defend herself were futile against the chimpanzee's overwhelming strength. Her free hand was severely mutilated by Bozo's bites, with several fingers crushed by his powerful jaws. The coordinated nature of his attack prevented any possibility of escape. Another man, Peter, heard Kendra's screams and used high-press water hoses to drive Bozo away from the barrier after nearly 2 minutes. But by then, Kendra had suffered catastrophic injuries to her face, neck, hands, and arms. The massive blood loss from severed arteries combined with shock from her traumatic injuries proved fatal within minutes. She died from hypovolemic shock and facial trauma before emergency medical services could reach her. The investigation focused on security failures that allowed visitor access to restricted areas. The Ugandan Wildlife Authority implemented enhanced security measures, and Kendra's family filed lawsuits against the facility. Then I recall another incident. This one far away in Saskatchewan on February 9th, 2014. The morning light filtered slowly through the northern boreal forest. For two men setting out that day, it seemed like another routine trip into familiar woods. David Lasky, 45, was a part-time wildlife photographer. His cousin Jeff, 42, often joined him on winter runs to retrieve SD cards from trail cams. They had grown up hunting and fishing together, though neither carried a firearm anymore. That weekend, after a light snowfall, late-season hunger had made local deer scarce, and David wanted to check a set of cameras he'd left by a frozen creek north of Waskew Lake. They'd heard distant howls before, never close. David believed wolves avoided humans by instinct. The plan was simple. A 2-hour ride by snowmobile, a short hike to the cameras, and back before dusk. Wolves in the region were typically gray, thick-coated animals averaging about 90 pounds. They moved in tight family groups of 4 to 8. Their strength lay in coordination, silent pursuit, strategic circling, and patience rather than outright speed. Under normal conditions, they avoided people entirely, focusing on deer and moose along the forest edges. The men dressed in insulated gear and carried only a single red flare for safety. By 9:30 a.m., they parked their snowmobile near the creek and began walking the last half-mile through packed snow, their breath hanging in the still air. At first, everything was normal. They reached the first camera, brushed off the lens, and swapped the SD card. Around 10:15, as they crossed the creek, Jeff's boot slipped on a patch of crusted ice. David crouched to help him up, steadying his cousin by the arm. That was when both noticed faint movement among the tree line across the creek. The animals stood still at first, only their eyes catching light. Jeff straightened and waved his arms, shouting to scare them off. The wolves didn't run. Unbeknownst to the men, a freshly killed deer lay half-buried in snow about 20 yards behind the tree line, a cached carcass the wolves had dragged there the night before. The pack was food-stressed, defending the cache rather than hunting. They began to fan out slowly, forming a loose semicircle. David muttered that they were just curious, that noise would drive them away. But even as he spoke, one of the wolves lowered its head and started advancing. The men began backing up the slope toward their snowmobile, moving quickly but without turning. The wolves followed, quiet and steady. Then the first lunge came, a gray blur across the ice, jaws clamping onto the back of David's leg. The impact drove him face first into the snow. Jeff spun and reached for the flare, but his gloves fumbled with the cap. 2 more wolves broke from the trees, bounding fast, their paws sending up bursts of white powder. David tried to kick free, leaving streaks of blood against the snow. He managed to roll onto his back and swing an arm, hitting one wolf across the muzzle with his camera bag, but another struck from the side, teeth finding his shoulder. Jeff finally snapped the flare to life, the red flame hissing. He swung it toward the animals. One wolf snarled and darted back, fur singed along its flank, but the others held ground. David was on his knees now, one hand pressed to his thigh, blood pumping dark and fast through his fingers. He tried to rise, but his leg gave out beneath him. Jeff charged forward with the flare, yelling, waving it more aggressively. The heat drove them back momentarily, circling just out of reach. David slumped sideways. I've spent years studying the intersection of wilderness and tragedy, and some stories, they stay with you. One such case is the death of David in the Canadian wilderness. To think, the official report listed the cause of death as exsanguination from femoral artery trauma, consistent with large animal bites. But that clinical language can't capture the horror of what his cousin Jeff must have witnessed. Jeff, panting, his breath coming shallow, swung the burning flare in wide arcs, forcing the wolves to hesitate. They retreated into the trees, growling low as they vanished. He pressed on his cousin's wound, but it was too deep. Within a minute, the movement stopped. He pulled David's camera bag close and used his phone to call for help. Reception cut in and out, but a faint intermittent signal reached a nearby ranger station. Authorities arrived about 40 minutes later by snowmobile. They found Jeff sitting beside the body, shaking uncontrollably. Wolf tracks surrounded the site in a broad ring with drag marks leading back toward the tree line and the cached deer carcass. Provincial conservation officers, assisted by federal wildlife agents, closed the area within the hour. Samples were taken from bite margins for DNA analysis, and the implicated pack was later trapped and relocated to a remote management zone north of Reindeer Lake. Wildlife biologists suggested the wolves had been defending a food cache, not actively hunting, but the distinction mattered little to those who saw the aftermath. Then there's the story of Kevin Chen. It was December 9, 2018, and the hillside community of Canyon Vista in suburban Los Angeles was experiencing an unusually warm winter evening. The residential development, built where urban sprawl met the wild chaparral of the Santa Monica Mountains, featured homes perched on steep slopes with spectacular views of the city below. Kevin, a 16-year-old high school junior and varsity basketball player, was running late after practice and decided to take his usual shortcut through an undeveloped lot rather than follow the longer route along the main road. He was an honor student and star athlete who balanced academic excellence with athletic achievement, earning recognition as one of his school's most promising college prospects. He lived with his parents and younger sister in a modern home that backed up against the natural open space that made Canyon Vista such a desirable address. Kevin often used the informal trails and vacant lots to move quickly between his home and school, a practice that had never caused any problems during his 4 years in the neighborhood. But the Canyon Vista area had been experiencing increased wildlife activity following a series of devastating wildfires that had burned thousands of acres in the surrounding mountains. The fires had displaced numerous predators, forcing them to seek new territory and food sources in areas they had previously avoided. Local authorities had issued warnings about mountain lion sightings in residential areas, but most residents viewed these as routine precautions rather than serious threats. Kevin was aware of the wildlife warnings but had never encountered any dangerous animals during his frequent use of the neighborhood's informal trail system. He carried his basketball gear in a backpack and typically moved quickly through the undeveloped areas, confident that his familiarity with the terrain and his athletic ability would keep him safe from any potential threats. Mountain lions are solitary predators that require large territories to support their hunting needs, with adult males controlling ranges of up to 100 square miles. Juvenile males are particularly dangerous as they establish new territories, often displaying more aggressive behavior than experienced adults. These young cats are less skilled at hunting natural prey and may target easier victims, including domestic animals and, occasionally, humans. Mountain lions are capable of incredible stealth and can stalk prey for extended periods before launching surprise attacks from close range. As Kevin jogged through the overgrown vacant lot, he was unaware that an 80 lb juvenile male mountain lion had been using the area as a hunting ground for domestic cats and small dogs that wandered from nearby homes. The young cat had been displaced from his natal territory by an older, more dominant male, and was desperately seeking to establish new hunting grounds that could support his survival. The mountain lion had been stalking Kevin for several hundred yards, moving silently through the dense brush while staying downwind to avoid detection. The cat's hunting instincts were triggered by Kevin's size, movement pattern, and the fact that he was alone and vulnerable in the predator's newly claimed territory. The attack came from behind as Kevin navigated through a particularly dense section of chaparral. The 80 lb mountain lion launched himself from the brush with explosive force, his powerful hind legs propelling him through the air to land squarely on Kevin's back. The impact drove Kevin face first into the rocky ground, while the cat's claws found purchase in his shoulders and back. The mountain lion's jaws clamped down on the back of Kevin's neck, his canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae, while his bite force targeted the spinal cord. Kevin's attempts to fight back with his backpack proved futile against the cat's superior strength and positioning. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across Kevin's shoulders and torso, each swipe opening deep gashes that caused massive blood loss. Kevin's screams for help echoed through the hillside community, alerting residents in nearby homes to the emergency unfolding at the vacant lot. Several homeowners called 911 while attempting to locate the source of the disturbance, but the dense vegetation made it difficult to pinpoint Kevin's exact location. The mountain lion continued his attack for several minutes, driven by predatory instincts and the stress of establishing new territory. Police and paramedics arrived within 10 minutes of the first 911 call, using Kevin's continued cries for help to locate him in the brush. I've always been drawn to the blurred lines between the human and animal worlds, the places where our paths cross, sometimes with tragic consequences. I remember reading about a man named Kevin who died after being attacked by a mountain lion displaced by wildfires. It happened in a residential area, a stark reminder of how easily we can encroach upon the natural world. The mountain lion fled, but Kevin's injuries were too severe. That incident, and others like it, often lead to new safety me's. In Kevin's case, the city fenced off vacant lots and developed new wildlife management protocols. His family even established a foundation to promote wildlife safety education. Then there's the story of Brandon Walsh. November 3, 2015, on a sprawling 300-acre exotic animal ranch in East Texas. These ranches cater to wealthy clients seeking unique photo opportunities with dangerous predators, interactions that most accredited zoos would never allow. The afternoon sun, I imagine, cast long shadows across the enclose, housing tigers, lions, and other big cats acquired through channels I can only describe as questionable. Brandon, a 27-year-old personal trainer from Houston, had heard about the ranch through word of mouth. He was driven by a passion for fitness and adventure, always seeking new challenges. He saw this experience as the ultimate test of his courage and confidence around dangerous animals. He'd built his business on helping others overcome their fears, and perhaps his success had made him a bit overconfident. He paid a hefty fee for a private photo session with Sasha, a 300-pound female Bengal tiger. The ranch owner, a former circus trainer, agreed to supervise, but not without emphasizing the extreme dangers involved. Bengal tigers, after all, are solitary, territorial animals with incredible strength and hunting instincts, regardless of human contact. The photo session began with Brandon outside Sasha's enclosure, maintaining a safe distance, but he quickly grew frustrated. He wanted closer contact for more dramatic photos. He convinced the owner to allow him into a smaller holding area, separated from Sasha only by a chain-link barrier. His fatal mistake was crouching down and extending his hand towards Sasha, believing his confidence would demonstrate dominance. The tiger's ears flattened, her tail twitched, and her hunting instincts took over. She launched herself at the barrier. Her paws struck the chain link. Her claws found purchase on Brandon's arm. The tiger's strength pulled him against the barrier, her jaws snapping through the fencing. The claws raked across his arm and shoulder, severing arteries. The ranch owner intervened, but the damage was done. Brandon collapsed from shock and blood loss. His physical conditioning was no match for such catastrophic injuries. I keep thinking about Brandon, the fitness model. He posed with a tiger for a photo shoot, a tragic decision. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but it was too late. He died from massive trauma and blood loss. It makes you wonder how such a thing could happen. The investigation into Brandon's death revealed a ranch operating outside the law, ignoring safety. Sasha, the tiger, was moved to a proper sanctuary. The facility was shut down. The tragedy rippled through the fitness world, a stark reminder of the dangers of using wild animals for photography. His family sued, arguing that the lack of safety directly led to his death. It was another sweltering August day, this time in Missouri, 2013. The air hung heavy with the stench of neglect on Tommy Rodriguez's property. He was running an illegal breeding operation. For over a decade, he'd been running puppy mills, but financial press had pushed him to cut corners, fatally. His 20-acre property was a maze of makeshift kennels, converted sheds, housing around 80 dogs. He specialized in popular breeds, selling them to unsuspecting buyers. But the real money came from the security, 4 massive dogs patrolling the perimeter, 2 cane corsos, each over 120 pounds, and 2 mastiff mixes, nearly 140 pounds. They weren't pets. They were weapons, trained for aggression. The financial press building for months ultimately led to Tommy's demise. Veterinary bills, feed costs, and facility maintenance had eroded his profits. Increased scrutiny from animal welfare organizations forced him to be more careful, but he cut back on everything: food, medical care, even basic maintenance. He didn't realize that hungry guard dogs were exponentially more dangerous. Hunger sharpened their predatory instincts, made them more territorial, and reduced their tolerance for humans. The dogs, once content with patrolling, now viewed everything, including Tommy, as competition for scarce resources. Signs of increased aggression had been there for weeks. They fought over food, marked territory more aggressively, and showed less deference to Tommy's commands. A smart operator would have seen the warnings, but Tommy was desperate, distracted, and overconfident. On that August night, Tommy made his final rounds, checking on breeding females and security systems. It was past midnight. The countryside was silent except for distant barking and the hum of inadequate ventilation fans. He carried a flashlight and a metal rod, but his mind was on finances, not the danger lurking in the shadows. The guard dogs had been without food for 3 days, not intentionally, but because Tommy had been preoccupied with the sick litter. Their hunger had reached a critical point, overriding years of conditioning. They were no longer guard dogs protecting property. They were predators looking for their next meal. Tommy's mistake was approaching the guard dogs without precautions. Usually he would have fed them first, but stress and exhaustion made him careless, and he walked into their domain with only a flashlight and false confidence. Brutus, the larger cane corso, emerged silently from the shadows. His 125-pound frame moved with surprising quietness. His head lowered in a hunting posture. Behind him came the others: Titan, the second cane corso; Rex, a 140-pound mastiff mix; and Scar, whose scarred muzzle told a story of his fighting background. Tommy realized the danger too late. As he turned to retreat, Brutus launched himself forward, his powerful jaws clamping down on Tommy's left eye. The impact drove Tommy to the ground, his flashlight spinning away into darkness as he screamed. The other 3 dogs joined the attack within seconds, their pack instincts fully engaged. Rex grabbed Tommy's right arm, crushing bone. Titan went for the torso, tearing through clothing and flesh. Scar circled, darting in to bite and retreat. Tommy's screams echoed across the empty countryside. The dogs worked with the coordination of experienced predators. Their attacks focused on disabling their prey rather than killing quickly. They had learned patience, and hunger made them methodical. The assault continued for nearly 20 minutes. The dogs took turns feeding on Tommy while he was still alive. His struggles grew weaker. The animals showed no mercy. They had been conditioned to view violence as normal, hunger as constant, and humans as either threats or food sources. I've seen what desperation can do. Tommy, who ran one of Missouri's largest illegal puppy mills, met a gruesome end. His body, broken and partially consumed, was found near the feeding area, surrounded by the very animals he exploited. It was a slow collapse, a macabre scene discovered only after weeks had passed, when the stench of death finally drew the attention of authorities. The surviving dogs, aggressive and in poor health, were euthanized. It was the end of Tommy's operation, but at a cost that extended far beyond his own life. The animals he had turned into commodities ultimately became his executioners, their hunger twisting them into something monstrous. It was August 22, 2014, and the heat shimmered over Cypress Point, Florida, an exclusive community built on reclaimed wetlands. It was the kind of place where artificial lakes and manicured landscapes defined luxury. That afternoon, Roberto Mendez, a landscaper who built his business from the ground up, was working to maintain those pristine grounds. He supported his wife and 2 young children, often working long hours under the Florida sun. Cypress Point had been constructed on former Everglades wetlands, with decorative ponds connected to natural waterways. Recent heavy rains had blurred the lines between these systems, creating ideal conditions for wildlife to move between them. Roberto knew the dangers of Florida wildlife. He'd encountered alligators and snakes before, and he was always careful around the water. That day, he was trimming bushes around a pond when his hedge trimmer slipped into the water. He waded in to retrieve it, assuming the manicured pond was safe. He'd worked around similar features countless times without incident, but the moment his feet touched the muddy bottom, a 10-foot female alligator exploded from the decorative vegetation. Her jaws clamped down on Roberto's right leg with devastating force. I've spent years studying the intersection of humans and the natural world, and some stories, they stay with you. Like the one about Roberto. He was pulled under, the alligator's grip relentless, its rolling motion sealing his fate in the deepest part of that pond. He drowned within minutes, the blood loss and trauma overwhelming him. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but it was too late. The alligator, a 10-foot female, was eventually captured and relocated to a remote area of the Everglades. The investigation revealed a simple, tragic flaw: the ornamental pond's connection to natural waterways. Roberto's death led to immediate changes, barriers erected, safety protocols revised. Then there's the story of Tara Whitfield. On March 22, 2017, she arrived at the Neptune Islands off the coast of South Australia. It's one of the world's premier great white shark diving destinations. These remote, rocky outcrops rise from the Southern Ocean, surrounded by waters that plunge to depths of over 200 feet. The nutrient-rich waters are a highway for migrating great whites, drawing them to hunt the abundant seal colonies. Tara, a 38-year-old marine biology graduate student from Los Angeles, booked the most expensive shark cage diving package, but she immediately began making unreasonable demands. She was known for her entitled attitude, believing money could buy anything. She berated Captain Steve Morrison and marine biologist Dr. Lisa Chen repeatedly during the morning briefing. Her boyfriend, Brad Mitchell, watched uncomfortably as she screamed at the crew for their safety restrictions. Captain Morrison, with 18 years of experience, had dealt with difficult clients before, but Tara's aggressive behavior and lack of empathy alarmed him. She demanded the protective cage be removed entirely, claiming she deserved unrestricted access to the sharks. When Dr. Chen tried to explain the dangers, Tara dismissed her as jealous. Tara believed her status and booking fee entitled her to special treatment. She threatened to destroy the company's reputation and file lawsuits if the crew didn't provide the extreme experience she demanded. She even suggested crew members should enter the water first to test the sharks. The waters around Neptune Islands hosted some of the largest great white sharks on Earth, apex predators that have ruled these seas for over 400 million years. These magnificent hunters can reach lengths of over 20 feet and weights exceeding 4,000 pounds. Their massive heads house rows of razor-sharp, serrated teeth. Each tooth measures up to 3 inches in length and is designed to slice through flesh and bone. Great whites possess the most powerful bite force of any living creature, capable of exerting over 4,000 pounds per square inch of crushing press. The crew had attracted multiple great white sharks using a carefully prepared chum mixture. Among them was a massive 18-foot female, estimated to weigh over 4,000 pounds, feeding aggressively on the bait. The shark displayed classic hunting behaviors, circling the boat while investigating the steel diving cage. Before entering the water, Tara secretly loosened the connections on her diving regulator, planning to create a fake equipment malfunction to justify exiting the protective cage. She believed she could manipulate the situation to get the unrestricted shark access she felt entitled to. Once submerged, Tara immediately signaled fake distress to the surface crew, pointing at her sabotaged regulator. Captain Morrison initiated emergency procedures to bring her to the surface. But instead of ascending, Tara swam away from the cage toward the feeding sharks, believing her superior intelligence made her invulnerable. Her erratic swimming movements created the exact type of distressed prey behavior that triggers great white hunting instincts. The massive female great white detected Tara's panicked swimming and abandoned the chum bait. The enormous predator approached from below at speeds exceeding 25 miles per hour. The shark's assault was swift and devastating. Rising from the depths, the great white struck Tara from below with tremendous force, its massive jaws opening to reveal rows of gleaming serrated teeth. The impact drove Tara upward as the shark's jaws clamped down around her torso. The razor-sharp teeth sliced through her wetsuit and deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite force shattered Tara's ribcage instantly, puncturing both lungs and severing major blood vessels throughout her torso. The shark's powerful jaw muscles continued applying press, while its head thrashed violently from side to side. The violent shaking motion severed Tara's body at the waist, separating her upper and lower torso. I've seen the raw power of nature turn deadly in an instant. I remember reading about a woman named Tara who believed her money could control a shark. It proved fatally wrong. She deliberately sabotaged equipment during a shark cage dive, violating safety protocols. The shark, amidst a cloud of blood, consumed portions of her body before disappearing. Tara died within seconds from massive blood loss, traumatic shock, and the destruction of vital organs. The aftermath brought stricter regulations and lawsuits, a stark reminder that nature cannot be bought or commanded. Then there's the story of Harold Thompson, or Hank as everyone called him. It was March 22, 2015 in Alabama. The sun beat down on his 5 acres, the sounds of barking dogs echoing across the red dirt. At 71, he moved slowly but confidently between the kennels carrying water, a routine honed over 20 years of dog breeding. He and his wife, Martha, had built their operation from the ground up, specializing in Rottweilers and German Shepherds. What began as a hobby had grown into a modest business, with several breeding females and males producing litters sold across the Southeast. But age, it seemed, had made Hank careless. In his younger days, he would never have entered a kennel alone, especially with breeding males during their territorial phases. He knew what these dogs were capable of, the power in their jaws, the speed of their attacks. But experience had bred overconfidence. The centerpiece of their operation was Brutus, a 130-pound Rottweiler. His massive frame made him their most sought-after stud. At 4 years old, he was in his prime, his bloodline tracing back to German working dogs. His offspring commanded premium prices from buyers seeking protection animals. Recently, though, Brutus had been showing increased aggression. A minor injury to his left rear leg had left him limping and irritable, causing him to snap at Martha when she tried to examine the wound. The veterinarian had prescribed pain medication, but the dog's temperament had grown increasingly unpredictable. Martha had expressed concerns about Hank working alone with Brutus, especially given the dog's recent mood changes, but Hank dismissed her worries. He'd raised Brutus from a puppy and believed their bond was unbreakable. On that March afternoon, Martha had driven into town for supplies, leaving Hank alone with the dogs. The kennels needed cleaning. Water bowls required filling. Work Hank had done thousands of times before. Brutus watched from his kennel as Hank approached, his dark eyes tracking every movement with an intensity that should have served as a warning. The animal was panting heavily despite the shade, his injured leg causing him to shift uncomfortably. Pain has a way of making even docile animals unpredictable, and Brutus was far from docile. Hank unlocked the kennel gate and stepped inside, bucket in hand, his attention focused on the dirty water bowl in the corner. He'd performed this routine hundreds of times, but today, Brutus was different. The dog's ears were pinned back, his tail held low, his massive body coiled with tension. As Hank bent down to clean the water bowl, his back turned to the dog, Brutus made his decision. There was no growling, no warning, just 130 pounds of muscle launching through the air with devastating force. The impact drove Hank face first into the concrete floor, his bucket clattering away as Brutus's jaws found their target. The dog's teeth sank deep into Hank's throat, crushing his windpipe and severing major blood vessels in a single, catastrophic bite. Hank's hands clawed desperately at the animal's massive head, but Brutus had locked on with predatory determination. The dog's powerful neck muscles allowed him to shake violently, tearing through tissue and bone with mechanical efficiency. Hank's screams were cut short by the damage to his throat, replaced by a wet, gurgling sound that grew weaker by the second. Blood pooled beneath his body as Brutus continued his attack, driven by instinct spread into his lineage for generations. The assault lasted less than 3 minutes, but the damage was irreversible. When Brutus finally released his grip, Hank lay motionless on the kennel floor, his life ebbing away in the Alabama heat. Martha returned home 2 hours later to find the property strangely quiet. She called out for Hank as she walked toward the kennels but received no response. When she rounded the corner and saw Brutus standing guard over her husband's body, the full horror became clear. The dog's reaction to Martha's presence was immediate and threatening. He positioned himself between her and Hank's body, his lips pulled back in a snarl. Martha backed away slowly, dialing 911 from her truck. Sheriff's deputies arrived within 20 minutes, but Brutus refused to allow anyone near Hank's body. After consulting with animal control, the decision was made to shoot Brutus rather than risk additional casualties. The massive Rottweiler died with 3 bullets in his chest. The investigation concluded that Hank's death was a tragic accident caused by his failure to recognize warning signs of an aggressive, injured animal. The breeding operation was shut down, the remaining dogs relocated, and Martha was left to grieve both her husband and the animal that had been part of their family. Then there was Sarah Miller, a 26-year-old experienced backpacker from Anchorage. It was September 3, 2013, near the Toklat River in Denali National Park, Alaska. By early afternoon, the wind had dropped and the landscape stood still, open and silent. From a distance, it looked calm, a place where nothing could happen quickly. But the quiet there was deceptive. She was known for her meticulous planning and respect for the wilderness. I've often wondered about the moment when respect for nature turns into something else, something far more desperate. Sarah, a seasoned solo traveler, found herself in Denali, a place she clearly loved and understood. Her plan was simple: a 2-day loop near the Tlat River, timed perfectly with the caribou migration. She knew wolves frequented the area, trailing the herds. She wasn't reckless. She carried bear spray, a GPS beacon, and enough food for 2 nights. Solo travel didn't intimidate her. She'd been doing it for years, often documenting her routes for hiking blogs. She had the required permits and even asked rangers about late-season wolf movements. The rangers told her sightings had increased near the river corridor, but she didn't seem concerned. Wolves in that region typically weighed between 70 and 100 pounds. They were built for endurance and speed, capable of covering 40 miles in a day. Their jaws delivered a bite force strong enough to crush bone, nearly 400 pounds per square inch. Usually they avoided people, living on caribou, hares, and ground squirrels. But when prey grew scarce, or human scent carried traces of food, curiosity sometimes lingered. That week, rangers had posted advisories near trailheads, noting that several hikers reported wolves trailing them at a distance. Sarah likely read those postings, but no record showed she changed her route. Her confidence in her precautions was understandable. Statistically, Denali's wolves avoided confrontation. Around 4 p.m., a tourist group spotted a lone figure standing on a gravel bar below the ridge. The hiker waved, later confirmed to be Sarah, before continuing upstream toward her camp. She reached her final GPS coordinate sometime before 4:45 p.m. The last photos on her recovered camera showed wide shots of the river valley and a small group of wolves following a caribou herd in the mid-distance. Tracks found later indicated she moved off the main gravel bar toward higher ground, likely planning to cut inland. The first sign of struggle began about half a mile from her tent. Her GPS unit recorded erratic movement, rapid looping, then a sudden stop. Investigators reconstructed what happened next through physical evidence and predator behavior analysis. The wolves had diverted toward her position once the herd passed out of sight. Sarah likely saw them at a distance and deployed her bear spray once. Residue was detected on nearby vegetation. Wind readings that afternoon showed a westward shift causing partial blowback of the spray mist. It worked briefly, driving the wolves about 20 feet back before the cloud dispersed. They began to circle again, emboldened by the fading chemical scent. One flank of the group approached from behind, following her retreat up a shallow embankment. Handprints pressed deep into the soil showed she climbed in haste. Blood marks began at the top of the slope. One wolf had likely lunged first, grabbing her backpack or arm. The straps were torn clean through, consistent with a pulling force rather than a cut. A second wolf joined, aiming lower, its bite breaking the skin along her thigh. She tried to fight back. The spray canister lay spent beside her pack, but the group coordinated, one attacking from the rear, the others darting forward. The ground at the site was churned with soil and hair, suggesting several minutes of movement before she was forced down. Analysis of tissue marks later revealed crushing bites to the neck and shoulder, consistent with a killing grip, the kind wolves used to suffocate large prey. Her jacket was shredded, and the torn sleeve, recovered 20 feet away, still held fragments of skin and fabric. Search efforts began that night with both ground crews and a helicopter dispatched after rangers noted her vehicle unmoved. The aircraft spotted a disturbed patch of gravel near the Tlat Channel the next morning. Sarah's body lay partially covered by soil and debris, her left arm missing, likely carried off by scavengers after the attack. They collected the camera and other items for analysis and later confirmed through timestamps that her final photograph was taken just 6 minutes before the estimated time of death. The park temporarily closed multiple backcountry zones along the migration corridor. Genetic sampling confirmed the wolves belonged to the Tolet pack. Investigators determined the attack began as a predatory test or prey proxy response that escalated fatally, but with no repeated approach or food-seeking behavior observed, no removals were ordered. At a private debrief, rangers explained the findings to Sarah's parents, who later issued a short statement urging that the park not punish what it protects. It was April 14, 2018, when Monica Barrett arrived at Everglades National Park in Florida, one of the largest tropical wilderness areas in the United States. The vast wetland ecosystem stretched across 1.5 million acres of sawgrass marshes and shallow waterways that served as home to some of North America's most dangerous predators. The park's intricate network of channels created the perfect habitat for massive American alligators. Monica Barrett, a 44-year-old divorce attorney from Miami, had booked a solo kayak tour to clear her head after a difficult custody case. Known for her aggressive courtroom tactics and confrontational personality, she had built her legal career on intimidating opponents and refusing to back down from any challenge. Her reputation for getting her way through sheer force of will had created a dangerous sense of entitlement. Tommy Rodriguez, a 52-year-old tour guide with over 20 years of experience, had immediately recognized Monica as a problematic client during the morning safety briefing. She had interrupted his present. I've seen the aftermath of alligator attacks, and the power of those creatures is truly terrifying. An adult male can reach 14 feet and weigh over 1,000 pounds, with a bite force exceeding 3,000 pounds per square inch. Their jaws are lined with 74 to 80 razor-sharp teeth designed for gripping and crushing. They can remain motionless for hours before exploding into action with lightning speed. I recently read about a tragic incident that illustrates this perfectly. A woman named Monica was visiting a national park during peak alligator breeding season. Despite repeated warnings about the dangers, she ignored safety protocols and ventured into a restricted lagoon, clearly marked with warning signs. She claimed her legal background made her smarter than the guides, and dismissed the park ranger's warnings as government overreach. Tommy, the tour guide, had repeatedly warned about staying within designated channels due to the active alligator nesting season. The park had posted numerous warning signs around known nesting sites where territorial males were guarding their offspring, but Monica became increasingly belligerent, accusing Tommy of limiting her constitutional rights and threatening legal action. Despite his attempts to maintain group cohesion, she broke away from the guided tour and paddled her kayak toward the restricted lagoon, determined to investigate what she thought was interesting wildlife activity. She claimed she had every right as a tax-paying citizen to explore any area of the national park. Unbeknownst to Monica, the lagoon served as a primary nesting area for a massive 12-foot bull alligator, weighing around 800 pounds, who had been actively defending his territory for 3 weeks, already driving off several smaller males. The presence of Monica's kayak immediately triggered the alligator's most aggressive defensive instincts. The bull alligator detected the vibrations from Monica's paddle strokes within seconds, having been resting motionless beneath the surface, perfectly camouflaged among the submerged vegetation. The alligator's attack was swift and devastating. The predator launched itself from the water with explosive force, its massive jaws clamping down on the front section of Monica's kayak. The impact instantly capsized her kayak, throwing her into the murky water directly in front of the enraged reptile. As Monica struggled in the water, disoriented and panicked, the alligator immediately identified her as a threat to his nesting territory. The massive reptile's jaws found purchase on Monica's torso, his razor-sharp teeth puncturing through her life jacket and deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite force shattered multiple ribs instantly, while puncturing both lungs and severing major blood vessels. The alligator then began its signature killing technique known as the death roll, a violent spinning motion designed to disorient prey and cause massive internal trauma. The reptile rotated rapidly in the water, spinning Monica's body while maintaining its crushing grip. The violent rotation generated a tremendous force that tore muscles and caused catastrophic internal injuries. The death roll continued for over a minute as the alligator spun through the water with Monica trapped in its jaws. The violent motion filled her punctured lungs with water, while the crushing press prevented any possibility of breathing. Her shattered ribs were ground against each other, causing additional internal bleeding. The combination of massive internal trauma, drowning, and blood loss proved fatal within 2 minutes. Monica's struggles gradually ceased as the alligator continued its death roll, eventually releasing her lifeless body, which floated to the surface. Tommy Rodriguez immediately radioed for emergency assistance, but rescue teams were unable to reach the remote lagoon in time. It was May 14, 2017. On a completely different note, I recall reading about another incident in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The ancient mountains rose majestically above the Tennessee landscape, their peaks shrouded in the characteristic mist that gave the range its name. The late spring afternoon was perfect for hiking, with golden sunlight filtering through the dense canopy of oak, maple, and hickory trees, while wildflowers carpeted the forest floor in brilliant colors. Sarah Johnson, a 29-year-old registered nurse from Atlanta, was enjoying a weekend hiking trip with her fiancé Tom, exploring the park's extensive trail system while taking photos to commemorate their engagement celebration. Sarah had always loved nature photography as a hobby, carrying her camera on every outdoor adventure to capture memories of their time together. Her medical background had given her a practical understanding of emergency situations, but her experience with dangerous wildlife was limited. Sarah had been hiking throughout the Southeast for over 5 years, building her confidence and wilderness skills through countless weekend adventures with Tom. She worked long shifts at Grady Hospital's emergency department, and these mountain getaways provided essential stress relief from her demanding career-saving lives in one of Atlanta's busiest trauma centers. That afternoon, Sarah and Tom were hiking through a remote alpine meadow when they discovered something extraordinary. 2 black bear cubs playing in the tall grass while their mother was nowhere to be seen. Sarah immediately recognized this as a once-in-a-lifetime photo opportunity. Black bears are North America's most common bear, but a mother with cubs, well, that's a different story altogether. Their aggression and territoriality increase exponentially. They will attack without warning to defend their young, seeing any human presence as a mortal threat. I've read accounts of their incredible strength and speed, capable of running up to 30 miles through dense forest. It's a chilling thought. In this instance, a woman named Sarah was photographing bear cubs, and tragically she paid the ultimate price. She and her fiancé Tom were on what should have been an unforgettable engagement trip. Sarah started taking pictures of the cubs from what she thought was a safe distance, but her excitement led her to move closer. Tom repeatedly urged her to keep her distance and leave, but she was the mother bear wasn't around. The cubs continued to play, wrestling in the meadow grass, and Sarah documented everything. Her photography session went on for almost 10 minutes, resulting in dozens of images. But Sarah made a fatal mistake. She positioned herself between the cubs and their natural escape route to the forest. As she moved to get a better angle, she unknowingly blocked the path the cubs would take to reach safety if threatened. This triggered the protective instincts of their mother, who had been watching from the tree line. The mother bear's charge from the forest was swift and terrifying. The 200-pound female covered the distance in seconds, her powerful legs propelling her with surprising speed. Her fury was focused entirely on eliminating the perceived threat to her cubs. Sarah tried to retreat when she saw the charging bear, but her foot caught on a fallen log, and she tumbled backward, still clutching her camera. The mother bear reached Sarah before she could regain her footing, striking her with bone-crushing force. Her massive paw connected with Sarah's back, her razor-sharp claws raking across Sarah's spine and shoulders, the impact shattering several ribs. Sarah's camera flew from her grip as the bear's enormous weight pinned her to the ground. Her attempts to call for help were silenced by the crushing press on her chest. The mother bear's powerful jaws clamped down on Sarah's neck, her crushing bite fracturing vertebrae and severing vital arteries. The bear's protective instincts drove her to continue the assault until she was certain the threat to her cubs had been completely eliminated. Within minutes, Sarah's movement ceased, the mother bear's brutal assault proving fatal. The protective mother remained near Sarah's body for several more minutes, ensuring the threat was neutralized before gathering her cubs and disappearing into the dense forest. Park rangers arrived over an hour later in response to Tom's emergency call, but Sarah was already dead from massive trauma. The bear family was tracked but left undisturbed, as wildlife officials determined the mother had been acting within normal protective behavioral patterns when defending her young. Sarah's death devastated the hiking community and prompted enhanced educational programs about wildlife safety and proper distance protocols. Her family established a foundation promoting wilderness safety education, ensuring her passion for conservation would continue through enhanced protection for both wildlife and outdoor enthusiasts.